Hey guys, thanks for coming back. Joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Appreciate you coming back. So today we're going to talk about in this episode. We're going to talk about how to effectively convey ideas, and I'm targeting this more at kind of verbal presentations than written presentations, but many of the concepts apply on written presentations as well. So um, I was fortunate at one of the stops of my career. We had access to several Harvard Business School professors, one of whom happened to be from Portland, Oregon, where I was born and raised as well. And he was also the head of HR at Goldman Sachs for a while. So he taught a class at Harvard Business School, and he said they did a lot of exit interviews because they wanted to change the syllabus and focus on the things that folks felt like they weren't getting out of the program. So how do we improve the program was essentially what they're looking for in those exit interviews. And he said the number one question, number one issue by far, as he said, people didn't feel like they were prepared to have difficult conversations. Now we're talking about how to effectively convey ideas. I apologize, but really, if you think about it, a lot of people consider those difficult conversations. Now, I'm fortunate that this has never been a real big concern of mine. I've never been real afraid of confronting stuff or people or having direct conversations with people. So the hurdle's a little bit lower for me, but I'm no different than anyone else. There's times where I'm like, crap, I got to call this guy and give him bad news, or I've got to call this person and tell them something they don't want to hear, or I've got to sell my idea because I don't think people are on board. All of those things or all those situations definitely covered by what we're talking about today. So, how to effectively convey ideas is where we're diving into. So, step one is really know your audience, and I can't stress this enough. So, I'm fortunate. I've been in charge of lots of different things in the food industry. And so that means, presenting at board meetings with billionaires in the room and presenting at a receiving dock with some folks had GEDs, some didn't graduate high schools, some had college degrees, whatever. I've run the spectrum, is my point. And that's not good or bad. That's not a value judgment on someone because they do or don't have higher education. But I can tell you they're looking for different information and different things. And a big way to effectively convey your ideas to those people is to know what they're looking for, consider their concerns. So if you're presenting in a board meeting and you've got a big project, let's say the CFO is listening in, he's going to want to know, or she's going to want to know, what the financial impact is of the company. What's the potential upside? What's the potential downside? How long will it take to get there? Is there a ramp up period? Is there a break even point? And if so, what is it? When do you think you'll reach it? Those are all things that you'd want to put into a presentation, whether you're doing it on a PowerPoint or writing it and turning it in, or presenting to a board and saying, "Hey, here's what we're targeting," and I'm standing in front of you, talking to you on the fly and answering questions on the fly. So those are the kind of things that group would want to know. Now, flip it around and say, "Hey, I got to go to a receiving dock, and we're going to go." I have personal experience on this one, so we had a facility in Maryland that was U shaped, and all of the trucks were received in the middle of the U, inside the U. And so, if you've ever driven a truck or watched a truck drive, you know that turning radius on that truck can be very challenging. And so, we had come up with a way to optimize the appointments and turn the trucks faster, so we had less traffic at the doors at any one time, which left more room to maneuver the trucks so you could offload them faster and turn trucks faster, which in a warehouse is a big deal. That throughput and that efficiency is a huge deal in a warehouse. But we had to get the crew to start buying into using our scheduling system the way it needed to be used. Well, if you're talking about folks that have worked in a warehouse, they're not super excited about new IT and new processes. It's like one more thing I got to do. I've already got to call out the check digit when I go grab a case, or I've already got to double verify my paperwork with the door tag, with the temp tail, all of those things that they have to do. And it feels like you're adding work. So you've got to explain to them that their world actually gets easier. They can get more work done faster with less effort. But those are different examples of, depending on the audience you're presenting to, they're going to want to know different things. But I can guarantee you the audience, whatever audience it is going to want to know what's in it for me. That's the first question you have to answer if anyone's going to listen to your ideas and give them serious merit or consideration. If they don't know what's in it for them, if it's just you talking about how awesome your new thing is or how awesome you are, you're done. You're cooked right from the rip. So you've really got to answer that question. I try to get that done very early in my presentation. I'm going to show you how we can make your shift 10% more productive with less effort. So you get out of here on time, doesn't cut your pay, doesn't cut your hours, but makes your life easier. So give me a chance to walk you through this. Or, hey, we've got a project that's going to make the receiving dock 10% more efficient. That throughput equals this many more cases through facility. Our average case cost is 24 cents, and we keep 10% of that, so 2.4 cents per case, this many more cases. That's what the upside is from a revenue and or net profit perspective if you're pitching to a board, right? So different audiences are looking for different things. And you always want to ask questions, especially if you can get questions answered before you make a presentation or before you make a pitch. Super helpful, because then you can tailor that presentation to that group and really answer questions that are meaningful for them and draw their interest in. So I've dealt with my fair share of speakers and presented at conferences and those kind of things. And that's one of the things I always try to get out up front, whether I'm the one presenting, whether I'm the one working with the presenter to help them be as successful as possible. What's your point of view? Where do you come from? What experience do you have in this industry? What experience do you have in this subject? If you have none, that's fine, because maybe you've got an overlap that says what you do could apply in this situation, even if you don't have a lot of experience in this situation. But asking questions to learn as much as you can about why you're presenting is really helpful. Plus, it makes it a collaborative process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but when people have an ownership in your success, if they have a vested interest in you being successful, they're going to want to help you be successful a little bit more, and they're going to give you more information. They're going to give you helpful tips and tricks. They're going to help you try to hit the target. So something to think about there. When you ask questions, recap statements back to them. So I do this a lot. So what I think I just heard you say is, and then I'll recap it back. And I'll try to use word for word what they said for me, which means you have to listen to what they're talking about. Not, hey, I've got a good response to this, so I can't wait for them to get done talking so I can talk and make myself look smart, sound like I'm prepared, whatever the case may be. I do a lot of listening in these situations and active listening. So I'm not judging what they say. I'm not judging their approach. I'm not judging whether I think they're experienced or not experienced, they're smart or not smart, none of those things. I'm just trying to listen to what they're after. And I always try to base my judgments on intent. It's because a lot of people can exhibit pretty crappy behavior, but their intent is actually pretty good. But they don't know how to approach the particular situation to get the result they're trying to get. So it comes across as heavy-handed or awkward or rude or whatever the case may be. But if you look below the surface and you try to understand someone's intent, I think it's a better way to judge whether you're dealing with someone that's got good intentions or not good intentions, right? It's in the word intent. And keep that in mind, because a lot of times their intent can get lost in the way the message is delivered. And I think that's where a lot of things go wrong. I thought President Obama was great at that. I was not a President Obama fan in terms of his policies, but he was a magician in terms of relating to and connecting with people because of the way he approached conversations. He made people feel included. He made people feel like they were a part of the group. He made people feel like he cared about what they thought. I thought he did an excellent job of that. And I think it's a good example of someone who, even if you don't agree with them, you can really respect the way they communicate with people and the way they convey their ideas. So I thought he did a great job of it. And also, asking questions and active listening also helps you gain common ground. So like this is the best example I can think of is gun control, for example. And a lot of times the last shooting that unfortunately happens in our country raises the question of gun control again. And the premise that I hear kicked around a lot is if you don't think the way I think, then you don't care about this particular subject and topic, which is not true. I can tell you that from my experience, anyone who staunchly supports the Second Amendment does not want school shootings. They're just as aligned as the folks that want to eliminate guns or regulate guns or moderate what type of weapon you can have. That's shared ground. Neither of those groups wants shootings in schools. None of those groups wants innocent people killed. They don't. That's common ground. So start from common ground and try to work forward from there. You may have different ideas on how to accomplish it. Second Amendment folks are going to say, hey, the very reason that you want to take those guns away or limit access to those guns is the reason that we can't. And the opposite side of the argument will say, well, you're going to keep having these shootings until we get those guns out of people's hands. But don't forget, you're both coming from common ground. You both want the same thing. You both want to stop unnecessary death by firearm. Like, that's pretty straightforward. And I see too many times, I see someone demonize someone that has a different thought process than them or has a different thought about how to get to where we're trying to get to. And that's just not productive. It's not a good way to interact with people. And it does not engender good conversations, which leads to collaboration, to brainstorming, to problem solving. If you're fighting with your opponent instead of collaborating with your opponent, especially on something as important, like literally lives at stake on a subject like that, it's just not a good way to go. So, really important, I think, to ask questions and really kind of understand all different angles, all different points of view, any particular topic that you're discussing, so you can really both deliver your ideas and facilitate a productive conversation wherever possible. So next, be concise. Be concise. Nobody wants a bunch of flowery prose. Nobody wants a bunch of big words. You don't sound smart. You sound like you're trying too hard. You sound like a fourth grader that just got a dictionary or a thesaurus and is, trying to use really outlandish words or words that aren't used in everyday vocabulary. It's been my experience that the best communicators use very plain and straightforward language when they communicate. They don't complicate things, and they don't use flowery prose, and they don't use words that are not used in everyday conversation. That doesn't mean they never do it, but it's not their go-to, and it's not how they try to get people on their side or to impress people by talking a lot, by using big words, by using flowery prose. Get to the point. I can't stress that enough. Just get to the point. That's the most important part for everybody. They want to know what we're here about. Why are we here? Explain to me why we're here. Make it make sense. Just get to the point. Be concise in your thoughts. You're going to have a much better audience and a much better chance of people receiving your message in a productive way versus shutting down and not listening to you. Which takes us to the next thing, which is pay attention to nonverbal cues. Can't stress enough how important this is. You should be able to feel if you're connecting with a room or losing a room. And there's lots of different ways to do that. So, like, I inject humor a lot into the things that I talk about because I think it keeps people interested. I think they appreciate it. I think it makes your talk more entertaining or your presentation more entertaining. I think it makes it go faster, and I think it keeps them engaged. But there's some audiences that, hey, there's not a lot of screwing around. And you're at a board meeting and the company's struggling, probably not the place to tell a lot of jokes. So you got to really kind of pay attention to nonverbal cues. And what are some of those nonverbal cues you should look at? First one's eye contact. As you scan the room, and I can't stress enough, if you're making a presentation to a group, don't stand and stare at one person, even if they're in the front row in the middle. Get your head up, look around the room, make eye contact with people, and watch how they're receiving your message. Are they making eye contact with you? They should be. If they're not, you're losing that room, and you've got to do something to get it back and get people to pay attention to what you're talking about. Body positioning. Are their arms folded? Their arms are folded. A lot of times that means that they're hesitant to accept your ideas or they're resistant to accept your ideas. Are they engaged? Are they leaning forward instead of backwards like I'm leaning now? This implies that they're not super into what you're doing. This implies that they are. While you're talking, are they shaking their heads? Yes, I agree with what you're saying. Or no, I don't agree with what you're saying. You may change what you're thinking, you may not change what you're thinking, but I think it's important to know how the audience is receiving what you're doing and what you're saying. So Really pay attention to body positioning, because those nonverbal cues are really helpful when you're doing a presentation and trying to get your ideas across. And last, ask for feedback, encourage feedback. You want those conversations to be interactive. What questions can I answer? I usually tell people before I start presenting, hey, don't be afraid to interrupt me. I can get right back to the point I was talking about. I've been doing this for a long time. I've made thousands of presentations. Heck, I was presenting things in front of 3,000 person audiences when I was in high school because I was a student body president. So it's never bothered me to stand up in front of a group of people and make a presentation or run a show or whatever the case may be. But you want to encourage feedback. You want active listening and active participation from your audience in almost every instance. And it's going to go a lot better. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I can tell you that I ran a sales show in Houston one time. And despite all my best efforts, I had an open bar, I had music going, I had great deals, and the audience just was not engaged. And I still think back about that and say, what could I have done different? How should I have done that different to get folks engaged in that event? Because we had great items and it really underperformed. I felt like I missed the mark on that particular event. So I want feedback. I want to know why I didn't get what I wanted. What did I do wrong? I talked too long? Was I boring? Did I miss the point? Did I not explain it clearly? Did I not make it clear what was in it for them? What did I do wrong? Then accept that feedback without making excuses and without saying, well, yeah, I know that, but here's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's not the point of the feedback. You're asking for feedback. I think it's very important to accept that feedback unfiltered, then take it back to however you do your post-mortem on any particular call or any particular presentation. And then you can apply those questions or thoughts and say, hey, I was thinking this. Should I have been thinking this? Maybe I was thinking about it wrong. Maybe my mindset leaked through to the audience, and that was part of my problem. That they picked up on my tentativeness, or they picked up on my lack of engagement, or they picked up on my lack of energy. Hopefully that's not the case, but it might be. But you don't know that unless you ask for feedback and receive it openly without judgment, and really use it to change your approach or tweak your approach. Now, look, sometimes personal attacks are what they are. If somebody calls you whatever, four eyes or buck tooth or whatever, like that's shitty, and you can nip that shit in the bud. But generally, that's not how things work. It's rare to wind up in those situations. So, that's kind of what we wanted to cover today, guys. So, how to effectively convey your ideas. Know your audience. Actively listen to what's going on, the questions, and you've got to ask questions and then actively listen to the answers. Be concise, get to the point, pay attention to nonverbal cues, encourage feedback, and most important, don't forget, you got to answer what's in it for them, not you, what's in it for them, and you'll be much more successful if you can convey what's in it for them at the onset of your presentation, because you get folks to buy in and listen and say, hey, that sounds interesting to me. I could use that, and I want to know how it's going to work. So don't forget to go to our website, guys, saltygingertalk.com. We've got links to all our social media on there. We've got all the episodes of our podcast on there. All our content is on there. You can sign up for our newsletter on our website. And we really appreciate you guys supporting the podcast. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Everybody have a great week.